So your video on addiction intrigued me, and I just wanted to post a response. I think a lot of times it's very easy to think that addiction comes from some cause, that there's always some sort of cause for addiction, that if you look back in your past deep enough, you'll find something that explains why you are the way you are. And that may or may not be true. Certainly, some of the influences you had during your childhood can shape some of your schemas. That can lead to addiction, can lead to bad communication habits, things like that, okay? But that's not the whole story. The human mind is also capable of coming up with things spontaneously. We've got all kinds of feedback, and especially positive feedback in our minds, where we believe things and things become true. Our very mode of perception depends upon expectations and the way in which we interact with the world. Sometimes we interact in ways that bring about results that we expect, and that for us is a positive result. So this is something called a schema, all right? These are things that can occur quite spontaneously. They don't necessarily have a cause. You can't always look at human behavior and look at a particular behavior and trace it back in history and say, oh yeah, this was caused by such and such. Some things just arise spontaneously, just out of the blue, for random, and they receive constant positive reinforcement. Certainly with some of the addictions, drug addictions, obviously there were the first people who started it who had no idea what they were getting into, okay? But those were nonetheless addictions. They weren't necessarily caused by anything, but the fact that the person got some degree of satisfaction out of it over the short term, even though over the long term it proved to be somewhat damaging. And the same thing with chemical addictions or behavioral addictions, schemas, that sort of thing. I think personally it's probably less important to try and dig up your history to try and figure out what happened, as opposed to being mindful about what you're doing now. The first step in being able to break any sort of cycle like that is to understand the vicious cycle, the way in which it receives constant positive reinforcement, and those schemas that keep the addiction alive. Once you're able to be mindful of that and to be aware of the feelings you have before you engage in that behavior or whatever, the patterns that emerge, the things that create that behavior, once you're able to disassociate any inclination or feeling that would lead you to that behavior from the actual behavior itself, that of course is the first step. With a certain amount of mindfulness, being aware of what your brain is doing, having a higher level view of your brain, understanding what your brain is doing, it doesn't take a lot of willpower. Quite the opposite. If you've got a lot of mindfulness and you understand what your brain is doing to you, and you understand how your mind contributes to it through these positive reinforcements and schemas, it doesn't require a lot of willpower. In fact, it's a very gentle push to push you in the right direction. And that's like the essence, I guess, of mindfulness, is being able to push things gently and do things you want gently, not having to force things. Because, like a lot of things with human behavior, the harder you push, sometimes the harder the resistance pushes back. All right? You want a steady, gentle push, and the resistance will fall away. It's the thing you're fighting is not willpower; it's the resistance to change, and the resistance to change are these schemas and these positive reinforcements. And that's what you have to learn how to break. If you can be mindful of these positive feedback loops in your mind, then it doesn't take a lot of willpower. It's just a very gentle gentle push in the right direction is all you need. Anyways, I hope that helps. So